Right, very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the India edition of our university recruiting panel, where we're going to be discussing everything you need to know to hire the best university talent without even having to set foot on campus. Now, we're going through a bit of a tough time right now, a time of uncertainty. So literally no one would have anticipated that at the start of 2020, the world would be gripped by a pandemic, that social distancing would become the next buzzword, that remote working would be the new normal, and even a panel discussion that we're having today is moving from what used to be a physical event to going completely remote. Everything looks headed towards either being remote first or remote only. And needless to say, recruiting is absolutely no different. COVID-19 is said to have an irreversible effect on our recruiting processes. And one of the most affected aspects of recruiting is university hiring, right? It's now reasonably unfathomable at least in the near future, to continue hiring on campuses the way we used to. I mean, like, gone are the days when we used to visit universities, interact with students on site, and hire talent. The pandemic has ensured that we innovate and identify means to circumnavigate the situation while still not really trying to compromise on engagement, the candidate or student experience, and of course, ultimately, the quality of hires. This panel is actually aimed at unraveling what it would really take to ensure campus recruiting continues, even in the face of adversities that we're having to deal with right now. To discuss this in detail, we have a really fabulous panel of speakers today, where we'll be discussing on how recruiters and even tech hiring managers around the world can adapt to, well, what I would say is the new world order. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce everyone to our panelists today. And as I introduce you guys, I would request the panelists to also turn on your video and microphone so that everyone can see you / hear you as well. So first up, we have Sathishkumar Sampath, who is a senior engineering manager at Trimble. Satish has over 23 years of professional experience and another 20 years experience in the end-to-end software product development. He has experience in leading cross-functional, geographically distributed software engineering teams, and has a passion for building high-performance teams that thrive in solving problems for customers. As a senior engineering manager, he currently leads the Trimble Cloud horizontal engineering mission in Chennai. I'm quite sure Satish's insights from a hiring manager perspective can add a lot of value to all tech hiring managers out there. So welcome, Satish.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here today.
We then have Silky Sethi, who is a recruitment specialist at ZS. Silky currently leads advanced data science hiring for ZS in India. She's been working with ZS for over 6 years now and has worked on multiple roles and technologies like. Silky drives L&D hiring initiatives for ZS across locations and also plays a key role in enhancing campus recruiting strategies for ZS in India. Welcome to the panel, Silky.
Thank you. Thanks, Alfred, and looking forward to the discussion. So thank you.
Perfect. We also have Rupa Ashwin, who is the talent acquisition manager at Ally.io. So unfortunately, I don't think Rupa is in a position to kind of join at the moment. She's facing a little bit of internet issues. So we will loop her in as soon as she's in a position to join. In the meantime, let me introduce Leetha Prajesh, who is the Director of People and Culture at Amadeus Labs. Leetha comes with over 17 years of experience in recruiting. She is currently the head of talent acquisition at Amadeus and is responsible for leading the organization hiring strategy for leadership, lateral and campus hiring in India as well. She revamped and streamlined this practice to ensure increased efficiency, optimization of processes, and continued effectiveness of the recruitment practices in India. She is also the head of compensation and benefits for Amadeus. Welcome to the panel, Leetha.
Thank you, Alfred. Looking forward to a good discussion.
And finally, we have Rahul Pande, who is the campus recruiting and branding leader for India with BrowserStack. So having approximately 13 years of experience within talent acquisition, Rahul has spent the last 7+ years within university recruitment across IBM, Expedia, and now BrowserStack. Some of his other stints have been with smaller consulting firms within the recruitment to operations space, and he's currently leading BrowserStack's university hiring and branding initiatives, where he's deeply focused and committed towards building a great university recruiting program, as well as trying to move the needle when it comes to candidate engagement, selection, and curating experiences across the entire candidate value chain. Welcome to the panel, Rahul.
Thanks, Alfred, and look forward to our discussion shortly.
Great. Like I mentioned, we also do have Rupa Ashwin, and unfortunately, like I said, she's been facing a little bit of difficulty in connecting. So she will be joining us a little later down the line while the panel discussion's in full swing, and I'm going to loop her in as soon as she is able to connect. Well, as of now, as you can see, we really do have an exciting panel lined up for you today, and I'm equally excited and looking forward to the conversation as well. So, but before we start, right, there is a quick poll that we're going to be running, and I would appreciate it if all of you could put in your responses to the poll. You could click on the option that's available for you in front of you in your screen right now. It's a pretty straightforward question, whether COVID-19's really put the brakes on your campus recruiting initiatives or not. And it'll be interesting to see some of the answers that come in from the entire audience. We'll be disclosing the results as well. We'll be waiting another 10 seconds or so, and then we could end the poll and we'll commence with the session. Okay, so quite unsurprising, really, the results of that poll. An overwhelming 74% of all attendees have said that COVID-19 has put the brakes on campus recruiting. Well, of course, it could be for obvious reasons. It could be for reasons apart from what we're going to be listing out and discussing today as well. But some of those methods in which we could reinvigorate campus recruiting of sorts is what we are going to be discussing in the session today. It's good to have a good context being set, given the fact that a majority of the attendees are facing a bit of a trouble in terms of continuing campus recruiting in the light of COVID-19. All right. Okay. So thank you all for your responses, everyone. And obviously, like I said, it's overwhelmingly in favor of having put the brakes on recruiting since COVID-19. But now that the poll is over, and before we actually get into the details of the discussion with the panel, I'd also like to talk to you a little bit about how Hackerearth is going to help in terms of this conversation, as well as in terms of university hiring throughout. So if you're looking to take university recruiting remote, Hackerearth can help you do exactly that without having to compromise on quality and candidate experience, right? So our assessments and remote interviews are known to work wonders together in a campus scenario, especially with the vast array of proctoring solutions that's available on hand, and the ability to make assessments truly bias-free because you can PII, etc. If you're interested in knowing more about how we can help, please do reach out to me at alfred@hackerearth.com, or you can go ahead and visit our website at www.hackerearth.com, and we'll be able to help. Now, sit back, relax, and soak in the conversation. Let's get started. The first question I have in store is actually for Satish, right? So Satish, from a hiring manager perspective, right? So how difficult or easy is it to hire early talent as compared to lateral/experienced talent?
Alfred, yeah. Once again, thanks for inviting me over, right? So that's a good question to start this conversation, right? So lateral versus campus hires. Specifically, sorry, can you hear me?
Hey, Satish, I think we lost you for a second, but I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about two things here, right? I think which kind of deserves a different handling, right? As far as lateral hiring goes, I think the scale and the logistics involved are slightly different from my perspective. Apart from what exactly you're looking for in terms of how you want to evaluate a candidate, and how you want to take him through the interview process, and so on and so forth. As far as the campus recruitment is concerned, more than the process itself, the first thing is that's daunting in front of you is the scale, right? Like the number of people who are applying, or the number of people that that you want to basically bring into the selection process is huge, right? So that's number one. And number two is definitely the logistics, right? You would have a specific need, and then you probably may not get that right, in visiting a single campus or two campuses and things like that, right? So that's where the logistic aspects also come in. So you do have to kind of draw out a plan that will make sure that you get what you want, right? So logistics and scale definitely are different. And of course the selection process itself, in terms of what you are looking at from an experienced candidate versus a new hire, they are completely different. I think you put in a lot more effort in terms of getting the initial filtering process done, because the numbers are going to be huge, and you want to kind of distill that into a number that that you want to take forward in the process. Yeah, so that's my view of this.
Interesting. Leetha, so from your experience as well, so how different is it in terms of hiring early talent versus lateral?
In my view, it's extremely competitive, much more than what we do in lateral or leadership hiring. And I think the reason is because, today's students have the choice of plenty. And, it's very difficult when we get into campus, because you already have the campuses slotting you into dreams, super dream, whom you can choose, whom you can't choose, what you accept, what you cannot accept. So I think it's a lot more effort is required in terms of branding, in terms of visibility, in terms of engagement, to actually get those hires on board. I think when the entire team goes on campus, we have more marketing professionals than engineers or human resources professionals. So I think it's really very competitive.
Right, that's an interesting point you brought up. You have more marketing professionals than engineering or human resources professionals moving to campus. Is it also from a branding perspective, or is there anything else that's going on there?
No, I think there are multiple organizations that visit the campus the same day that you are present, and it is up to you to create that niche, to make that difference, right? So technically what you're doing is, if our engineer leaders join us for all these campus pre-placement talks. We have the head of HR sometimes joining us for our pre-placement talks. So when you're there, you're in the capacity of actually talking about who you are as a brand, what makes you different. So for me, it is a lot about the sellability and the uniqueness that you bring that will attract them to campus. So this is in a way a lot of marketing that we need to do, which on the lateral and leadership hiring side we don't need to do so much, because people are more mature, they have more information about organizations, roles they want to get into. But these young engineers, as I call them, they're not very clear. So your pitch needs to be really strong should you want to hire the best talent.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a really competitive market out there right now, if you think about it, right? And the way you position yourself does have a big impact in terms of the kind of talent that you're going to get as well. Right? That's actually a really good point. The next question I have is for Rahul, really. So, does the campus hiring strategy change now that most companies are working remotely? I mean, you've been handling campus for a while now, and I know that there's always going to be one mold that you've been used to, but now that everyone's working remotely, is there a change in the whole process and the whole structure? How's it been?
Sure. So I think that answer would be yes and no, right? If you look at it strategically and you look at it operationally, I can touch on either bucket, right? So the way that you size talent, or the way that you look at which schools are good for which roles and what is happening, that research methodology might not change so much, right? But where I see a deep, significant change happening is in the operational standpoint. How can you curate a virtual onboarding program that will match an in-house onboarding program, right? How would you also look at inventory management, let's say? So you have about 100 students joining from across India. Now all of them will be working virtual. How do you get laptops across to them, right? How do you create L&D programs also internally with other teams? So I think from a standpoint of what might change drastically is how we interact internally with our teams and how can we build that experience forward. Because what you don't want to be doing is, even from a virtual setting, you don't want to kind of move the experience level down. You want to keep the experience level the same. whether you're onboarding virtually or you're onboarding in-house, right? So the basic structure of aligning yourself to which roles would matter, what research is going on in various schools, what is happening on a faculty level, right? What are the main trends they are seeing? Some of these points would not change, but operationally to diagnostic it and to run it on the schools, because I feel two things. One, you have to get great talent. Once the talent is in your door, you have to keep it there as well, right? So keeping the talent will be a crucial part of what organizations do. I think ramp up times, speed times, how firms individually work with teams will also matter a lot more to the experience, the holistic experience in a way.
Got it. Got it. That's actually a pretty good insight. Just a quick follow-up question on that as well, Rahul. So uh, there are a lot of ways in which, like, a lot of companies will give a taste of, like, what it's going to be like to work with your organization before they would kind of, like, get somebody on board. It could be some folks kind of, like, get in a video in terms of, like, what working for that company is going to be like. Some folks even call folks down to their office and say, hey, take a tour, virtual tour of it, and then see all the stuff that we've got. Now that everything is moved remote, right? How does that still happen, right? I mean, how do you guys give folks a taste of what it's like to kind of work
Sure.
at your company, even in a remote setting?
Sure. So I think out here, the key game is being proactive, right? Even envisioning what can happen. So, like for BrowserStack, when we hired MBA folks across the various IIMs and other schools, even before they onboarded a month or two, we had multiple engagement sessions with leaders within the company, right? And these were sessions where they could ask, as we term it as AMA, or ask me anything sessions, right? It was not so much about the role, it was more about the culture, how is the day-to-day operationally in terms of the roles they're handling. They had open feedback points with all the leaders where they could Slack them, etc. Also, because we tried to create Slack groups as well, right? So how do you keep in touch with them? I think when you look at things that might work, etc., to what you are saying, I think you have to be leveraging technology. I think there's some great vendors out there who have this virtual experience that they can hand you. I don't know if you have seen it recently on LinkedIn, but De Beers, they had an invitation which was a hologram, which the CEO came as a hologram as an invitation, right? So firms are playing around with a lot of technology models to move the needle there. You just have to make sure that for your organization, what would work, what is the USP that someone would join you, and then curate that into a virtual setting. But what is also equally important is to keep all channels of communication open, be over communicating to a certain extent, not trying to send repetitive messages, but understanding what actually works. So doing a lot of feedback loops, understanding with the students what exactly are they looking for, how to progress, and then looking at vendors to stitch this together.
Got it. So leveraging technology to leverage your USP, number one, right? And also proactive communication. Excellent. I think that's great actionable tips for us to kind of proactively ensure that our company branding as well is taken care of. Thanks for that, Rahul. So the next question I have is to Silky, really. And I mean, this is a question that's probably was on everyone's minds before we even set out for this panel or before even attending this panel, right? So how do you tackle remote university hiring? I mean, is that something that's even possible? I mean, in the past, if you told me that I could kind of hire from universities without even having to set foot on campus, that would have been something I would have probably laughed at, right? But now it's a reality, right? How do you tackle that? How are you taking the whole university recruiting virtual?
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's a great question, and I believe we should thank COVID to some extent here, because if it was not COVID, I think we would have never ever tried pushing our boundaries, or even trying out that potential that of going to universities virtually. Yes, it is a difficult task of handling the university recruiting very remotely, because it's about the campus recruiting is not just about one event, right? So it has a lot of prelude to it, and during and then after. So we have to, when we are planning for a remote interviewing platform or any recruiting event, I think very very important point is that how well are we planning, first of all, because planning plays a very very important role, right from engagement, like just Rahul pointed out. We need to use the right technology per se to showcase what is it that we are offering. We need to strike a right chord amongst the campus students to ensure that they're getting the right information from whatever we are trying to portray across, and they're choosing the right career as well. Then while we are on the campus, we need to ensure that the process is planned in such a way that you visualize your interview process even like day advance of actual campus day, right? So that you wrap up everything and you give the similar experience to candidates, so that they are not really very scared about it. And of course there's a lot of change management, I believe, not just for the candidates, but I think even for the hiring managers, because we are so used to and we are so conditioned of going to the campus, meeting people in person, and then making a decision about hiring or not hiring, right? So I think it is possible, and one of the biggest challenge is technology is there to support us, but it's how well do we really maneuver the change management in the firm with the campus students, and use the right technology to sort of put everything together and in perspective, to actually have a successful remote campuses.
Got it. And do you think that was a bit of a challenge maybe right at the start? I mean, we, like you rightly pointed out, right? We come with this mindset or this fixed process that we've had in the past of like having to visit campuses, etc., right? And now we are not completely in the position to do that. So do you think moving to a completely virtual university recruiting scheme is something that's going to that's going to prove to be a challenge, or is it something that you feel that recruiters can seamlessly adopt?
It would be a little challenging, like I mentioned, but it will be how strong are we in terms of planning it ahead of time, and how well do we use the technology that's available in the market. So, because at the campus, it is very, very important how well do we screen the candidates and we choose the right perspective, pool of candidates. So, it's about it. It will take some time because it has change management, but once we kind of adopt it, I think it has some advantages as well, right? So it would help us leading a long way, once we get in a hang of it and try and do it, as we move ahead, I feel.
Great, got that. Leetha, this like I want to extend that question to you as well, right? I mean, how is that? Is tackling remote university hiring going to be a challenge, or is there something different that even you have in mind to kind of make sure that companies tackle this a lot more seamlessly? That uh, do you have any other opinion there?
Sure. So actually, I was when the poll ran, I was just going to say that I think we belong to the 24%, by the way, because we are actually we have already made our first campus hires for this season, and we are actually looking at hiring 150 young engineers, all remote, right? So I must be very honest, and I think we have Rupa now with us. Okay, hi Rupa.
Hey, Rupa.
Okay. Yep.
Hey, can you
So
hear me?
I think I'll be very honest. Yep, we can.
Yeah, please carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'll be very honest that I don't think we could have even imagined what we have done this year. And, it is definitely like Silky said, thank you to COVID. I think there is some transformation that we saw in our whole campus program. We, in fact, put together an entire program, not just to hire, but also to onboard our joiners, our offers committed to last year. We did close to 140 engineers onboarded us virtually. We started the pre-engagement, on a virtual basis, connects with them, making sure that weekly calls happen, and then we are doing the entire interview, pre-placement talks, everything online. So we are actually present. It's almost the feeling of being present in campus, but more like, of course, the feeling is different when you're physically there, but we have been able to kick it off, and we are really proud of what we've been able to do.
Got it. Yeah, Satish, I think you wanted to add something on as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think you asked whether it was possible or not. Trimble recently, did this program, right? Like Silky said, there's a lot of planning that is needed. And there's also a mindset change that is needed. But then the COVID situation forces you into action, right? You don't even think well ahead of what is going to happen and things like that. You're basically pushed into adopting a certain strategy. Recently, Trimble did make its attempt to hire remotely, and we were pretty successful in that. Yeah, we did our planning. We did leverage technology as well, and also kind of changed our hiring strategy itself, to kind of mitigate some of the challenges that you come across, right, when you are completely remote. Because there are certain aspects that you could do completely remotely, but there are certain things, being in person, gives you that advantage. Yeah, it is a challenge, but it's not impossible, right?
Got it, got it. Yes, Rahul, you had something to add too.
So I 100% agree with what everyone has said. I think from BrowserStack's perspective, we've been doing Zoom from last year, mid of last year, right? So yes, it can be done. There has to be a push from the leadership and the HR and the leaders to get the ball rolling. But I think it is very doable. I think if you plan proactively, you understand who the end user is, you understand what motivates him or her to join a firm. I think you can curate strategies, right? You need an open leadership, you need an open HR leadership, C&B, L&D, etc. But it's not impossible at all to do. Again, I would like to keep here that it's also based on the size of your org. So if you have 400,000, yes, it might happen in increments over time, but also size of org plays a role as well.
Absolutely. And some really good answers coming in. And this is going to be building up to one of the questions we have right at the end, which we'll come to that when we get there. But in the meantime, Rupa, thanks for being able to make it. Everybody, this is Rupa. So she's the talent acquisition manager at Ali.io. Just to give a quick bio, she's a staffing professional with over 12 years of extensive experience in staffing and recruiting in the IT space. She's got work experience working in the United States and India with companies like Phoenix Technologies, AMD, Alstom, to name a few. Right? She's an expert when it comes to global recruiting for EMEA, APAC, and North America. So welcome to the panel, Rupa.
Hey, thank you, and sorry for the delay. I had this. Typically in Chennai, we have daily, like once in a while, there's 9 to 5 shutdown, and today happens to be that day in my area. So my backup has also got burned out. So try to log in from hotspot. Let's see how long I survive.
That's a bummer. Anyway, glad you're able to make it, Rupa.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So going forward, Rahul, I do have a little bit of an extension to the last question, which I wanted to extend to you first, right? So when you spoke about the fact that you've been you were using Zoom for a year now, right? So keeping that in mind and keeping the fact that staying remote is going to be something that's here to stay, right? How do you define an effective campus hiring strategy of the future, right? So what are some of the main components that's going to go into the strategy, and how and overall, how are you going to make sure that the quality of hires pretty much stays intact?
Sure. So I think firstly, even earlier to put together a strategy, the first thing that we should understand is who is the ideal candidate for that role. If you're hiring engineering, you're hiring strategy, you're hiring sales, you're hiring operations, etc. What is the ideal persona? That has to be understood. Then as recruiters, we are basically advisors. We need to sit with leadership and say, hey, based on the market intel that we have, based on what's happening in the market, this is doable, this is not doable, this is a roof shot, it's a moonshot, etc. Right? So we have to be advisors also to let them know what is available in the market, what can we move towards. Once that is ascertained, right, I think then it breaks down into what roles you're hiring, the intel you have, the relationships you have with the campuses. You even now, if you speak to a lot of schools, you'll see the joining dates of the 2022 batch are either some have joined, some haven't joined, so that will push down the recruitment dates that they have on the calendar, right? So being very aware of what is happening in the campuses, what is not happening on the campuses. With that, you also have to do great market intel, know what your salaries are being bucketed, who are the firms that you're playing against, what are they paying in the market, what branding strategies do they have, etc. The last thing you want to do is oversell. You want to hit the right candidate at the right time using the right strategy, right? And I think one of the really important things that I've seen over the years is that leadership buy-in. You might have a super strong strategy, but if the leaders don't buy it, your strategy goes nowhere. So your goal also as a professional in this field is to also understand from a leadership perspective what will work, cost versus ROI. What is happening in the market? Where can you get maximum efficiency from? Right? Once you put all that together, your strategy should be looked across hiring, branding, onboarding. Once they come into the org, post onboarding, is there a 1-year ramp up time that you speak to them, you be with them, understand where the problems are? So you can break it down in these chunks, I feel.
Got it, got it. Rupa, like, I'm keen to know your thoughts on this as well.
So you can repeat the question.
Yeah, so the question was technically on how you design a very effective campus hiring strategy, given that, you know, everything's gone remote these days. Like some of the things that we need to keep in mind while framing this remote campus hiring strategy, and to ensure, like, you know, the quality of candidates pretty much stays intact.
So honestly speaking, for Ally, it has not made a big difference post-COVID or pre-COVID, because even last year, we pretty much did most of it remote, because we had a very, very small panel. I was the 9th employee of Ally, and July 22nd, I joined, and we did the first campus on August 4th. So we had very little short time to really plan this for people to travel. I mean, there were developers who had to send out a release, and I had to force them to do campus interviews. So pretty much we did the similar thing last year. So it is just an exercise we are following again. Only to colleges which were local to Chennai, we actually, went there live. So for us, we were already prepared for this. If you ask me, Lazar, just that we are better prepared. So, pretty much building what Rahul, said, like pretty much building that relationship with the campus, knowing whom we are competing against. So we did some mistakes the last year, right? I mean, we were day 4 in IIT Madras, and most of the students who gave the test were not even available the day we went. So it is not it's all a learning. Like each year you learn to do better. And this year we really strategized it very well. We knew the quality of candidates we want, from which colleges we want. We did our homework well. We had very good support from the leadership team as well. So we were very well aligned, and I think we're doing a better job than what we did last year. Pretty much, you have to be very well prepared for campus, because you're competing with so many other organizations and the students as well, right? I mean, if you're competing with tier 1 institute, the student pretty much defines where they want to give, which interview they want to sit. I mean, you and me cannot, as an organization, cannot really decide, go to the college and say, hey, I need these candidates. So you have to play the balancing act very well. I mean, I feel so.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's a lot more of a like, it's a candidate-driven market technically at the moment as well, if you think about it, right? So, and like we pointed out earlier in the conversation as well, it's where Leetha said that it is really competitive out there. So we really need to also kind of step up our game in terms of our campus approach, so that we stay on top of people's heads, stay on top of candidates' minds, as well as also find the best talent for every trial.
Yeah, not just the many universities, you cannot just define it by the pay structure that you have, right? Being totally a startup with no branding, it makes it even more difficult for companies like ours to go there on day 1. So you really have to have a very well defined. You have to plan ahead. You have to, I strongly believe in this, that you really need to know with whom you're competing today. The day that you go, okay, these companies have already been there. So you need to position yourself very well in the campus.
Absolutely, and we need to do that research well in advance so that we're totally prepared before we even step into campus, right? Yes. Great. Okay, so the next question that I have is actually for Satish. So university recruiting has long been dependent on in-person connects. I mean, I know that hiring managers also do tend to visit campuses, so that you have, especially for tech recruiting, right? So that the engineers would be in a position to connect with their future hiring managers and get a sense of how things are like before they even embark on that journey. So how do you replicate that particular field, right? Without, like I said, without having to set foot on campus.
Yeah, I can talk about tech recruiting, right? For your question, if we can replicate, I'm not too sure if you can replicate that that in-person feeling, right? But I'm definitely sure that you can get as much as closer to that experience as possible. For example, I think in a tech hiring kind of a scenario for campus hires, the initial thing could be a test, right? Like that is more, you don't have too many touch points there. You could definitely leverage technology. You could definitely do it remotely, and a lot of companies do it that way as well, right? And once you select those candidates from the testing part, that's when the touch and feel thing comes in, right? That's what you want to replicate, because ideally, if you go to the campuses, and you talk to the student, you give them some sample programs, you give them a problem to solve, and you engage with them, right? Like it's a journey that it's kind of very dialogue oriented, right? So that being the case, you'll have to replicate that in a remote hiring scenario. I think we got hold of this technology, I think from Hackerearth, I think face code, especially for the technical interviewing section, where we could get as close as possible to a real technical discussion or an interview scenario, right? You could give a problem to the candidate, and he could solve, and you can easily follow how they are solving the problem and things like that, right? And then you can give your inputs and stuff like that. So to your question, can we replicate? Yeah, definitely. We can come very close to replicating that kind of an experience. But then there are certain things that you cannot replace, right? Like for example, observing body language, because you're going to get into a video conference mode, and probably you would assume that the technology stays intact, right, throughout the session. The video is not grainy, and it is not hanging up, and things like that. But if all of those things are fine, there are certain aspects that you can get closer to that experience, the body language and other things. I'm not too sure if you could replicate that in a remote hiring session, but you can definitely get very close to an in-campus selection experience.
Got it. At least we could get as close as we could, right? And
yeah,
glad. Right. Yeah, and glad to know that Face Code has been able to help you as well. Yeah. All right, so guys, now we do want to run another question as a poll, so please pay attention to your screens. Again, this is a question for the future. So do you think university recruiting can go completely remote even after the pandemic? We'll be keen to see your inputs on this as well. Okay, so a mixed bag in terms of responses. A lot of folks, majority of the folks, in fact, seem a little undecided whether it's really going to be the case or not. 34% says yes, 30% says no. For the benefit of everyone involved, we are going to kind of discuss this question towards the end. So stay tuned. Let's see what the panel has to say about this as well. Thank you for your responses, guys. Okay, so let's move on. Leetha, the next question's for you. And so we spoke about ground reality right now. We spoke about having to make do with the virtual campus hiring initiative. Right. So apart from this just being something we're doing in the moment to circumnavigate the pandemic or an adverse situation, do you think there are other clear advantages of moving university recruiting completely online from a TA's perspective?
Okay. So I would think that completely online loses the human touch, and I think that visibility factor is really important in campus. So I'd put it this way, that I think a hybrid approach would be a probability, and something that maybe we in Amadeus too would want to kind of pursue is maybe we kind of split the whole program into seeing what can be done on campus and what can be done remotely. And definitely there's an advantage, right? No doubt, in terms of I mean, and in terms of cost efficiency, there is a lot of cost efficiency. The whole team that travels, the related costs, being on campus, being physically present over there, all that does go away. So I think it's a good opportunity to relook. Yeah, I mean, Rahul was talking about the overall strategy. It's important to have a buy-in also from your leadership to say that who is it and where all do you want to stay invested the traditional way, and where all do you want to do it a little differently. So I think we might get into a pretty much a hybrid model of operating the whole campus agenda in most organizations.
Got it. That's actually a good take. So moving to a more hybrid model rather than sticking with one over the other, right? That's a good good suggestion as well. Rupa, what's your thoughts on the same as well from a TA's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, something similar. Already we are following that, as I mentioned. It's not possible for us to travel to all the campuses today, right? Though I love the energy in the campus. I mean, you're really sent to another world looking at these young minds, sharp minds, and you really can have a presence there. But yeah, I mean, physically it's not possible. And post-COVID, I think, yes, it's going to be definitely hybrid. Might still would love to go to some, but might not be able to travel to all. So yeah, I like the word hybrid, Leetha.
Yeah, that seems to be a very good concept, Leetha. I think we should probably have a separate session on expanding how we could probably move to a hybrid model in itself.
Sure.
Great. And Satish, same question back to you, but from a hiring manager's perspective, right? What are some of the advantages that you would find as a hiring manager to take the entire campus recruiting process remote?
I think I can think of speed and scale, right? I think if you're leveraging technology and then you're doing things remotely, I think you can definitely do things much faster. And the scale, of course, right? From a coverage perspective, I think you can definitely cast your net wider, right? These the distance challenge doesn't become. I mean, the logistics and distances and one university being in this corner and the other one there, for your needs, they no longer become relevant, right? So these are clear, I think advantages, right? So that's what comes to my mind.
Got it. Time and efficiency, and of course, those are two very important things that we'll be getting if we move the entire process remote.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Okay, so we've discussed some of the advantages. We've discussed advantages from a TA's perspective. We've discussed advantages from a hiring manager's perspective. There's obviously going to be the flip side to this as well, right? There's going to be challenges. So, Silky, the question is actually going to be to you. So, what are some of the most obvious hurdles you could think of, that you're going to face when you take the entire university recruiting online?
I think the first and foremost challenge is going to be that lack of human or personal touch that we spoke of, because at campuses these are very very young people, like they are still in their journey of understanding what role, which career they want to really sort of move ahead with, and that personal touch when we are at the campus, when we are trying and explain them things, I think that puts a lot of things into perspective for them as well. And one of the other important thing is that they cannot really see the culture. So when there's a team of 2 or 3 people traveling to the campus, they can actually experience what kind of a culture would this firm be like, when during the interactions, or maybe the way the presentations are made, or even during the interview round. So I think that is one of the obvious hurdles, unless until there's an augmented reality or something like tools where we can actually give them a feel that you're not sitting right in front of them and giving them that experience. I think that is going to be one of the most important hurdle. Secondly is that how much ever we try and screen them in trial, like when there is technology constraint, right? If there's no power, if there's a power cut, for example, if someone is located at a very remote location, I'm sure that, like institutes like Kharagpur, for example, they block your IPs to a some extent. So these are some of the nuances which still exist, and because of which, how much ever you want to try to be giving them a personal touch for the interviews, you may have those technical glitches that come across. And lastly, the behavioral aspect of the people, right? So you can check their technical skills by having technology used and platforms used, Hackerearth is helping us screen the candidates in the advance. But for example, while you are doing a Zoom interview as well, right, or maybe using a face code, if there is no electricity or anything, you don't have any other way of actually assessing any sort of behavioral trends of a person there. So I think those are some of the obvious hurdles that would come our way.
Got it. In-person connects is obviously going to be something that's very hard to replicate. I mean, it's practically almost impossible to replicate, or even unless we have a life-size hologram of folks that we could that we could use. Even then, the whole field would be different, right? Great. So moving forward a little bit, in the interest of time as well. So this question is for Rahul, actually. So is majority of your early talent hiring done solely from universities, or do you have other strategies in mind as well to tap into that audience?
Sure. So if I can understand the question right, is like, do we not go not only to campus and hire kids across the value chain, right? Not being
Absolutely.
on campus.
Yeah.
Yes, there are lots, right? You can, I mean, it's also based on the kind of hiring you're doing. But if we speak of specifically about tech hiring, you can look at the Scalar Academy, which is done by Interview Bit. There are schools like Lambada School, right, where there are new programs where they, pay back once they join, right? You can look at doing external hackathons, right? And then having people from these places who win get a chance to go to the final interview, so you don't really step on to the college campus. If you're looking at specific events, Bangalore does Grace Hopper at a big scale. There are Anita Borg, events going on. So there are, based on who you're trying to attract, what is the attraction strategy? I think there are various channels that you can use, right? And I think you don't necessarily need to go all the time to campus, but then again, what works for your firm? I think that's really important, right? A lot of the time when you read research reports, you're saying, oh, we should do X, Y, and Z, but that is for their firm. See what USP your firm has. Why do people join you? And then create a strategy looking at external metrics, not the other way around, right? But there are a lot of options you can use.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that means it's not just going to be university, but there's a lot of other options apart from that, where you can have your entire early talent strategy built around it, right?
Yeah, you can run a program on GitHub and scale from there. Who would be the main repos or the guys for DevOps, right? You can use algorithms there as well, so to know who is the exact.
Yeah, there are a lot of these upskilling institutes as well which have come up. Not everybody is able to get into the tier 1 colleges or the campuses. I've seen that also work well. Some of the upskilling organizations which train young grads, and then you have a pool of candidates there as well, fresh grads out of college.
Got it. Absolutely. Next question is actually for both Satish and Rupa, to be honest. So, Satish, from a hiring manager perspective, right? Like, are there differences and attributes that you would look for in a tech candidate from universities versus, let's say, a 4-year or a 3-year experienced tech, the tech candidate, right? So, and how do you kind of spot that as well, Rupa? If I were to kind of extend that question to you too. So, Satish,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay.
You want me to answer that first, or Rupa,
Sure.
you want to take that? Okay. I think the campus hires, you are really looking for strong fundamentals, right? The aptitude of the candidate, and how strong he is in the fundamentals, right? And what his problem solving capabilities are, communication, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? Like, so you're basically looking at these attributes, right? Like, whatever he says, he claims to know, then you want to test on that, right? That whether what he's supposed to know, if he's good or not. And then how is he responding to challenges, right? You give him a surprise a challenge or a problem, how is he responding, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the fundamental aspects, right? Like how what kind of potential he has, to grow into a thorough professional, right? As soon as he steps into the corporate world. I think those are the things that we kind of focus on university tech hires. We don't focus too much on, hey, whether he knows a particular programming language or not, but rather programming language is a way to solve a particular problem like a language. But is he able to kind of think through the problem, and is he able to kind of come with solutions? So those are the aspects that we see.
Got it. Yeah, Rupa?
Yeah, I mean, see, the talent is very raw, right? When they come out of college, obviously the exposure to a corporate world is nil unless they have done some basic internship and things like that. So obviously there are going to be, different scales at which you're going to evaluate these candidates. But there are going to be a lot of the cultural fit thing, right? And all those aspects, the behavioral aspects are similar for all human beings. Somebody just because they cover 4 years in an industry doesn't make them any different. So I think there are certain things which are definitely common, but there are definitely aspects which you cannot expect a raw talent to have, and somebody who has already been in the industry for spent enough time there, right? So there are different evaluation criteria, and I think your interview process has to be also be designed accordingly. And I think most companies today have good corporate to like campus to corporate programs when you bring in these kids, right? So recently at my organization also at Ally, we did this. Most of them are very boring, like people come in and give lectures for corporate training. So we have this company called IVM, which does with dramatized, and they do it in a very, because they're very young, they don't want to get bored with all these. Already the induction programs are quite boring. So we wanted to make it interesting, and we got very good reviews. We onboarded only 6 of them this year, first year, but it was very, very interesting. So yeah, I mean, as I said, yes, the interview process has to be designed different. The strategy is different, but there are some common aspects which you have to evaluate as per your organization values and what you want to bring in and what is the need of the hour. Because we are a very, very small company, so it might be different for me than for a Trimble, who's already a 10,000 organization, right? Member organization. So because you have people to come in and train, whereas I don't have people to come in. So I need people who will quickly sink into the organization and start, getting accustomed to the culture and all that faster. So it varies. Yeah.
Got it. So for a larger enterprise, of course, trainability is something, if I'm not mistaken,
Absolutely.
that it would be something that you would look for. But at a startup, of course, I think speed, agility, and the ability to kind of hit the ground running, it would be an attribute that you would really want to bring on board, if I'm not mistaken. Great. So it does differ from between industry and between companies as well, depending on the size. Great. I want to kind of tap into one point, and Leetha, this question is actually for you, right? So we spoke about a lot of advantages in terms of moving university recruiting online from a TA perspective. One of the other advantages that I actually see is from a sourcing angle too, right? You now have the ability to kind of cast a wider net of sorts, right? You kind of, if you were holding off on traveling to a few universities, maybe because of logistics restrictions or time and cost restrictions, you don't have that a lot anymore, right? So do you think this will affect your approach to campus recruiting going forward, right? Not just in the short term, but in the long term as well. The fact that you have a wider pool to kind of tap into, as well as with the fact that for a fact that your competition is also going to be tapping into that pool.
So like I was saying, Alfred, that definitely we ourselves today have moved a couple of variables to how we used to run the campus strategy, and it is not because of the pandemic, right? It was something that we wanted to do better, and that's where the whole strategy piece comes in. You need to relook at your programs, not set it at a given point in time and say that we'll run it this way. We need to keep looking at it at least twice once in 2 years rather, to say that you're still relevant. Now while you're doing that, like I was mentioning, the way we would need to look at it is, who are those campuses that give you consistent results, okay, and who are those campuses that from an industry, as an organization perspective, you want to stay connected with and build a pool of talent. So based on that is how each each program will need to kind of panel out. Maybe within tier 1 I say that this is my tier 1A 1B and then go there, or I say that okay, if I'm going to tier 2, then this is how I will tackle my tier 2. So I think those are the changes. In the past we didn't really think about it in that way, but we are in our 7th year of or 8th year of hiring young engineers, and in 8 years we have seen at least 3-4 evolutions of this process. And I think it's to do with how is the organization strategy moving, and how does this young engineer hiring impact that organization strategy that you need to play it out.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. Now I want to kind of open up a question, like to the rest of the group as well, to the entire group. In the interest of time, there are a few more topics that I wanted to touch upon, but I don't think we're running out of time, so I don't think I'll be in a position to do all of that. Simple question: is the future of university recruiting going remote? Right. I want to get everyone's opinion on this. I think we can start with Satish.
Yeah, like we heard before, right, amongst the panelists, it is definitely going to go remote, but I see that as more of a hybrid way of doing things, right? Like, what are the things that you can do completely remotely and effectively remotely, right? Versus what are the things that that you still would want to have a personal touch. So a hybrid approach is definitely going to play a big part, and I think at least our company, we are going to look at how to streamline our processes to leverage technology to shift some of these tasks, right, like in the recruiting task, under the remote bucket, and then go about doing it.
Got it. Okay. Silky, what's your opinion on this as well?
Yeah, I completely agree to Satish that it will be very, very dependent on how the company wants to have strike that balance of which how many schools they want to really visit in person versus not. But I think a good point here would be that even if we have to go to say 50% schools remote, I think that apprehension that we had in the beginning from the campuses as well, and so for from the hiring managers, that how would we manage and how will we able to sustain that remote interviewing process, and try and like those questions are solved right now. I think to some extent we have a good way forward from here, that even if we have to do remote interviews for a few universities or few colleges to get the optimum result and cast wider nets, I think that would be acceptable both by students and by hiring managers and organizations as such. So yes, it could be like a mixed approach that we take basis how the organization want to scale up.
Got it. Rahul?
Yeah, so if you say the future as in completely remote, that will depend, right? If you can provide the same experience that you can provide on campus and you get the same NPS scores and the feedback back, I think leadership and firms would be looking at doing it more. But that, again, time is the main critical factor. We don't know in the next few quarters if things open up, what will happen, right? But I think as long as you can provide the same experience, both from your organization perspective on the internally, externally to the students and the faculty as well, if you're doing immersion programs, etc., I think then this virtual way of looking at it might move up fast. But I think if you find out that my experience is being hampered, then this hybrid model would work best.
Got it. Okay. Leetha?
So I think I already mentioned it, Alfred, but so I think we'll take the middle path, right? We are doing campus hiring, and all of us feel that it's really different. It's not the same going into campus and doing it. So the way I'd like to say it is that maybe we'll do a mini panel on campus and a mega panel off campus, and ensure that scale, efficiency, cost arbitrage, everything is reached. So I don't think it will go completely remote. I think the impression will be very different from a branding organization impact angle. So yeah, maybe the middle path, you do some and you don't do some.
Got it. Rupa?
Yeah, I mean, nothing different than what others have said. But being a startup and an early stage startup, I would love to go to a campus and have that impression and branding done out there. Because as I said, we are fighting against so many organizations out there. But yes, do we have a choice? That is a bigger question today. I mean, one is the cost, the time, both, and the efficiency, the time that is spent traveling, no availability of panel. Keep looking at all this. I think it's definitely going to be a mixed bag. So local colleges, maybe we'll not go to certain colleges. As Leetha said, maybe we'll do a mixed bag. Maybe the TA folks travel and maybe not the panelists. So we need to make that decisions, make those, devise the strategy in those ways. So obviously, I think it's definitely going to be a mixed bag.
Absolutely. So I think the overwhelming response here is that we're going to be finding that middle ground, so as to say, come up with a hybrid model wherein keeping in mind speed, efficiency, logistics, time, travel, etc., as well as your actual requirements as well, right? The kind of universities you want to go to, or the kind of quality of candidates you want to get on board. Finding a middle ground is going to be key. For now, the situation may be that we're all forced to go remote, right? But in the future, I think there's a lot of learnings that we get from this entire remote process itself, which we can impart to a regular campus recruiting process, which means I, for one, would take a bet and say that, going forward, even after the pandemic has left us, however soon or late that's going to be, I don't know, right? We are going to definitely embrace a lot of principles of remote hiring into a regular process going forward, right? So call it a hybrid process or call it a modified campus recruitment process. There's always going to be a change that's going to happen after we are out of the pandemic. Great. Thank you. Thanks so much, guys. Those were the questions that I had. We do have some questions from the audience, and I'm going to be addressing that out there. So the format in which I'm going to do this is I'm going to call out the question, and whoever wants to really answer it, you could just raise your hand, and I could chime you in. Right. So the first question that I have is from Divya. Right. So Divya says, we are a 250 sized organization and are planning campus recruiting for the first time. So any specific recommendations that would help to be more successful in this virtual environment? Rahul, yep.
Yeah, I think technology firstly, right? Also then to understand in terms of if you're your size is what you mentioned, once you get in all your graduates, what is the ramp up time for them? What are the levels will be, right? You don't want to get everyone and then they saturate at the same level. So how will you build the job levels internally? What will be the ramp up time, etc. And then what is the appropriate number to hire per year to build that level year on year, right? I think that will be something that you want to be looking at. Obviously, again, technology and leadership buy-in, etc. But also to understand that once you get all these folks in the door, what are the next steps there? You want to create a holistic approach, not just hiring them, but hiring them and then integrating them within the firm and then the roles.
Okay, yeah, Rupa.
Also, you should keep in mind that you're hiring 1 year ahead. So if you're a 250 member organization, if you're going to hire like 20 people or 30 people from 30 candidates from campus, do you have the capacity to mentor them when they come in? That is also something that it's very important, because today you can go out there and hire, but you have to be prepared that they're going to be coming next June, walking into your door, and you have 30 people walking in. You need to advise your hiring managers that how are they going to strategize, that where are they going to be. Your headcount has to be planned well ahead. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a good planning strategy for them when they come into your organization. So, I mean, this is, for example, for internship, right? You're planning 2022 pass outs for interns for next summer. You go this year for campus. I mean, it's like 2 year ahead planning that you need to do. So, that's something that you definitely need to keep in mind. Whether you'll have the bandwidth for mentorship when you hire them.
I hope that answered your question, Divya. The next question that I have is from Jay. So he says, dear panel members, thank you for your insights. Most companies are moving towards hackathon-based hiring. And Silky is actually quoted a ZS example saying ZS Campus Speed Challenge is an example there as well. So I think the question here is that he would like to know about if this will become a norm in terms of hiring in recent times, hackathon-based hiring, and something we didn't discuss in the panel as well. But I'm curious to know your thoughts, guys, as to whether hackathon-based hiring is also something that you guys are looking forward to in terms of adopting in the near future. Silky, maybe you could start. Yeah.
Sure. So I believe that hackathon-based hiring is definitely one of the most important aspects when we are planning for hiring, right? Because it is just one event that you do and you get to get actually a very good pool of candidates. It also gives you an overview of how you can actually check the evidence of whether a person is ready for a role or not, just as opposed to just having it through a very small online test or something. So there you are actually very deeply checking on the expertise of the people as well through hackathon model. So it may work really well, and in fact I think that is one of the upcoming trends as well. So even before pandemic hit us, I think the hackathon was something which is taking up a lot of pace in general in the market, especially when it comes to tech hiring per se, or even ZS Campus Beats is actually an example where it's not even related to tech hiring, right? So we can actually tap into really good pool well in advance if we do that. And it has some way hackathon has helped us. It's a way of remote hiring in a way, right? So it has given us a way of how we could actually do cast a wider net, get the best of the people in terms of hiring, and also do a very good evidence based check on the people as well, like when they're actually solving something, some problem which is very related to what you're doing in your firm. So you get a very good fit, I would say, through this route.
Got it. Yes, Leetha.
So like what Silky was saying, this is something that we definitely debated a lot this year, and we had the choice of either doing the hackathon model or the regular test interview, that kind of a model. Something that I do see coming up for sure, a good leverage, and we were actually thinking of it more in terms of maybe a wildcard entry into offers on campus, more than putting them through the entire process and look at CGPA scores and those kind of things. Maybe people who excel in these hackathons, they get like a as confirmation or a early offer from the organizations, replacing the whole PPO model, which is today quite rampant in campuses. So yeah, something that we are definitely debating.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just one point, just one point that I wanted to
Sure.
highlight. I think it's with Hackerearth itself, right? So we tried the similar model that Leetha has just talked about when we did a young data scientist hiring challenge, I think, with Hackerearth. So that actually gives us an edge on interviewing the best talent even way before the campus we hit the campuses. So yeah.
Got it. So I also
And I
have a
think you can
feeling
see
that,
real
yeah.
teamwork.
Yes, Rahul, continue.
I think it really shows you what teamwork is about, right? Even in engineering, you have to work within pods now in firms, right? So when you're presenting a hackathon, either you're doing it individually or mostly with teams, you're presenting with 4-5 people. So how is the language there? How do you react to questions? You can really drill deep down into what teamwork exactly means. And if you look at any engineering operation, it is teamwork at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. And hackathons do have another benefit as well, by the way, which of course warrants for a separate discussion altogether. But before moving into an actual virtual university hiring affair, you could also throw in a hackathon in there as an engagement activity, right? Something that could engage students, as well as from a branding perspective, right? There's no way to show how tech forward you are than throwing your own real-time challenges out there for folks to solve, right? So it could be something that works in hand with each other. You throw in a hackathon and then you move into campus. So you set the precedent right at the start with the hackathon, with what you were like, the fact that your branding is also taken care of, and then you move into the actual campus recruitment drive, wherein I'm sure that the hackathon in itself would have been enough to get you a lot more students interested in sitting for a process. Right. So in the interest of time, we will only be taking one more question. So this is from Prithvi. So he says, after hiring the best talent from campus, how can we engage and retain them if they're now working remotely? Are there any initiatives or new programs to maintain relationship between organizations and employees? Now, onboarding is a bit of a challenge. I mean, I could kind of add to that as well. Onboarding is a bit of a challenge since you're not seeing a person face to face in the entire hiring process, and you're in a new organization altogether, right? There could be the fact that a new hire could face difficulties right at the start. So how do we tend to solve that problem? Who wants to take that?
You have to have a strong
Shall I?
campus to corporate program that is there in place. You have to work with your hiring managers, definitely. The engagement is always a challenge, right? Even today or before, candidate engagement, it's nothing new that has changed post-COVID, I feel. You give an offer and you're out there, and they're joining you after 1 year. So, obviously, you have to have a strategy there. I think Leetha wanted to say something. I'll wait for her to finish.
Yes, Leetha.
Thanks, Rupa. So what I was saying is, I think the mantra there is communication, 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 right? I mean, be in their face, make sure they hear you, they see you, they know who you are, engage them into the team in a different way. If your learning and development team is involved, or even the hiring team, right? And typically the hiring team kind of, once they onboard, it kind of passes on into the organization life cycle. How can the hiring team still be connected? Find out how they are doing. I think in this matter, communication is what really makes the big difference, and to keep that going, I think we'll keep the engagement up. And it's not just only valid for the young engineers, across all organizations. A little more effort in this group for sure.
Yeah. And
Actually,
maybe
when
leveraging
we
the
open
alumni group. Sorry. Go ahead, Rupa.
No. For example, things like, you have an event in the office, invite them, even if they are, far away. Like when we opened a new office, we actually invited all the campus hires and the people we had offered. We flew them down to Chennai to see the new office. Send them the, videos, and send them newsletters, send them all, keep them engaged constantly. Have hiring manager connects, not just the TA team, right? That really doesn't help. Have buddies already assigned to them. Don't wait for a year for them to come over and assign a buddy. So, those kind of things, you need to be very, very proactive here. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think you touched upon that alumni could play a very, very important role here, that,
Absolutely.
tying them up to your alumni and, ensuring that they have continuous connects with them until they join us, and being there whenever they have some queries. So that plays an important role too.
And I think feedback, you have to hear feedback from them. It's one thing if you have great strategies, but you need to hear it from the end user if it's working or not. So being proactive, being able to do multiple sync up sessions, so at BrowserStack, we do it like every 2 weeks. I'll speak to them, say what worked, and informally, then put all that together, take it to the leadership and say, hey, we should try to look at this now, or that, or that. So I think listening to the end user really important as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to throw in another quick question in there. I just got that from somebody. So Neha says, we're an IT company based in a small city in Uttarakhand. We're facing a lot of issues in terms of hiring. We want to hire candidates who already have experience in IT field, like with PHP, with Java, etc. Except Naukri and Monster. What are the other channels that where I can get experienced software developers? It's a sourcing question, right? But if you're doing our part to help somebody out, that's okay. We could probably impart our knowledge there.
Maybe a hackathon route could help, because that actually tests your skills and you can get the best of the candidates. So that could be one of the suggestions out there. Using the
LinkedIn,
technology.
InstaHire.
Yeah, GitHub.
Absolutely, yeah.
Stack Overflow.
I think, yeah, Hackathon, GitHub, Stack Overflow. There's plenty of solutions, Neha, for you to find experienced software developers, and I hope we've answered your question as well. Okay. Okay, so I think that's about the time we have today. So we will have to kind of close out all the questions right now. simply we're going to be in a position to probably look at the way to get the panelists to answer some of those questions post the webinar as well, since we're well over time. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all our speakers for taking the time today out of their busy schedules to impart your knowledge. Thank you so much, everyone. I can't express that in enough words as to how grateful I am that you are all able to be a part of the panel today. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye.
Alfred.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
I'd also like to thank our audience for making it to our panel today. I personally have learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody who's part of this panel has too. And if you found the session to be valuable, I definitely would urge you to go ahead, spread the word all over social media so that the wisdom that's imparted in this group can reach as many of our peers as possible. Right. And like I mentioned right at the beginning, if you are looking to take university hiring remote, Hackerearth can help you do exactly that without having to compromise on quality, candidate experience at all, right? So if you are interested in knowing how we could help, please reach out to me at alfred@hackerearth.com or visit our website, www.hackerearth.com, and we'll definitely be able to help. Please do follow us on social for updates and info about other upcoming panels. And if you are interested in getting a demo of Hackerearth, please go ahead and click on yes, set me up for a demo. If not, maybe you could click on no, maybe sometime later. But also please do know that we will have additional panels coming up tackling other challenges in tech recruiting. And we're also going to have an event, a virtual event of a large scale coming up next month. So please stay tuned for that as well. We will be updating it all over social media. And once we go live, please make sure you register and attend that event as well.